Hey everybody and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to give you a really quick high-level overview of some of the cool functionality and just a general tutorial for Microsoft Power Apps. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, very quickly, Power Apps is a low-code platform where you can build applications for your business that can perform a variety of tasks. You can do things from building a basic dashboard to making project management or ordering systems, and you can do it very quickly and seamlessly integrate with a variety of sources like Excel Online, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. So let's go ahead and go through a couple of different features and functions in this video. Now, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. All right, so jumping straight in, I'll put a couple of resources in the description, one of which is going to be a link to a variety of Power Apps functions that you can read more about, and then another is going to be a link to the Power Apps series or playlist I have on YouTube. We have two screens here, and I'm going to put them on the same home page, and then I'm going to start down two different paths with Power Apps. So the first option I'm going to choose is creating an app with a template. And then we'll show a couple of different options from here. The next one, which I'll do as this first demo, which is going to be an easier one, is we're going to start with data. Now, the reason I'm doing two is I want you to see two different ways to create your apps, but another reason is the way that you start your app is incredibly important in cutting down time for your building process. So if you start out with your data and you build a template with your data. So if we were to go on this previous page, and you'll see if we go to create, if we start with one of these, it automatically builds the app and connects to that data source, and everything's kind of seamlessly integrated already. If you try to start with a template and then change data sources and things of that nature, it can take a lot longer. So what we're going to do, we'll start with data, just like I said. We'll scroll through and you'll see we have a couple of choices. I'll choose create a table. And then basically what we're going to be doing here is we're creating a table from whatever choice. So in this case, I have a sample CSV file. So I'll select from device and I'll choose book 1. Now, one of the things I don't like about creating this way is you'll see we have this book and then you'll see we have this project management record. Let's just say that we go immediately forward from here. We don't make any changes, don't look at anything. It's going to build a single screen app with CRUD functionality. Create, read, update, delete. Now, if we go to this for a second, you'll see that these have 3 screen functions. So you'll see it will typically have browse, basically the whole list, a screen with details. Basically, if we selected an item, it has the details of that item, and then an edit screen. So the full functionality is screen 1, we see all the items. We click on an item, we go to the details screen. We then click edit, and then we go to the edit screen. So that's the functionality. With this, starting with a CSV file, you'll see it does a couple of things. First, it creates the data source, which is important to remember. The second thing is it's creating this, which we'll see in a moment. So it creates it in Microsoft Dataverse. Part of the reason I don't love this is when we go to this function, which I'll go over in a bit, when we click fields, you'll see that we have a ton of fields, but most of these aren't even the fields from the file I uploaded. So I had like a project, a status, and a number of deliverables. But this uses, I'm guessing, AI or something, and just pre-built functionality in Dataverse to build more, which isn't stuff that I'm actually using. I only have 3 columns in my sample file. So if you want, you can look through some of this and see more details, but I'm going to cover this in a high-level overview. And then we'll come back to the templates in a moment. So we have started our app. We have created this single-page app, just like I said. So let's go over some of the Power Apps functionality. You have your back button, your undo, and then you have your paste function. Now we do have the ability to insert, and from here, this is essentially the same as if you were to click on the insert menu here. Now we also have add data. So right now we have our project management record, which is the Excel file we uploaded that is now stored. And you'll see this table name here is what we saw when we opened the app. Now you have the ability to look at tables, and then you have the ability to view your connectors. If you want to create a new screen, you can choose from a wide range of pre-built templates. So if we clicked on calendar, it'll create that screen, and then we can view that screen, which you'll see you actually have to like do something with the screen typically. But now this screen is created, so if I wanted to add something, I can just click insert, text label, and now that screen essentially exists. So when we look at this, we now have our original screen. I told you it's a one screen app, and now we have screen 2. So we can click on the actual screens and see basically what they look like. Now you can click expand to see all of the different things within that screen. So we have everything hooked up so far. Now the functionality is built in because we've said, all right, connect this to Dataverse. So everything is connected to Dataverse. Now if we want, we have some options. We can go to our data section. We can go to add data, and we can add it in as an Excel file. So we can connect to Excel Online, Office 365, SharePoint, or you can click See All Connectors, and there's a wide range of connectors you can work with. In this case, if I wanted to import from Excel, I can do so and select the Excel file. It has to have a table, and then click Connect, and now I have my Excel file with the actual raw data. Now, we'll cover that in just a moment. But a high-level overview, if I select this component here and choose Data, I can switch it up and connect it to my table instead, and you'll see it breaks some functions because I'm now connected to a different data source. And to fix that, I can either edit those and update them to reference the correct information, or I can just go to my record and go from there. Now, you'll see when I click on fields, these are the 3 columns in my actual CSV file. When I switch to the Microsoft Dataverse file that was created automatically, you'll see I have additional fields that aren't really relevant because they weren't in my file. So that's where, creating that initial source and how you build it is incredibly important. So now we have some of those basics. Let's cover a couple of additional functions. So we have our theme, which is pretty straightforward. Change the various colors within your application. You have the ability to view properties. So if I go to my tree view and I select this container, which is basically everything, you'll see when we choose to expand it, everything falls under this container. If I decide I want to look at an individual component or item, I can select it from here, and you'll see we've now selected this item. If I want to view its properties, I can click Properties, and now I get all of these different properties in the display field. Some components have more than others, for example, height, alignment, color, visibility. Then there's an advanced field. Now, this will also change based on the type of property you're working with. I'm not going to cover all of this because there's a ton, but the idea is anything you want to edit or change about this, most of it can be done here. Now, when you click this, you'll see that we also have this drop-down menu up here. This is a wide range of functionality that's tied to this element or function or whatever you want to call it. So we'll call it an element. So in this case, the text, when we select it, you'll see it says this item.current status. So this text is not static. So the best way to explain this is if we go up here and we decide, okay, we want to build out our new page and we want this page to be static text. So this right here, you'll see it says text is text. Really straightforward, no problem. And then if we want this to be dynamic, we'll go back to the home screen and you'll see this list has all of the components from our Dataverse file. So it's saying this item.current. A better way to understand this is when we click on this record gallery, which is what we're looking at here, it's a list of items. You'll notice that there are multiple fields here, but they don't exist here because we have our first separator and rectangle next arrow, and then you'll see we have our title field. So basically these 4 components are being repeated for each of the elements or each of the items in the column that we are working with. So in my case, you'll see that we have the different project statuses. So the idea here is whatever change we make to this first one, if we move this up, you'll see everything else shifts with it. If we move it over, everything will shift with it. So it's basically everything mirrors this first one in a sense, but the content within changes. Now that's only if we were to use a record gallery. If we use other components, for example these cards, they're a completely different type and style. They're almost like their own container with various elements. Now, you'll have to unlock these to update the properties because they're locked, which is, again, pretty easy and straightforward. You just click unlock, and then you can make your edits. So the app functionality right now, we have our tree view on the left with all the different component types. If it's a container or something similar to a container, you can click the arrow to expand it and then edit the components within. And every component you click, you can view the properties for over here. And then you can also view components over here. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. Now I've covered how you can add your data sources, and you can insert additional items. For example, if I were to put insert date picker. Now you'll see that date picker pops in up here, and then we can click it, edit it, move it around. Now, some apps like this, for example, it can be a little bit harder to work with because it's a pre-built template, so it's not always something where you can just drag and drop something easily. Now, before we get into further editing the app, I want to show you the difference between the save and the publish functionality. So save allows me to save the app. Pretty straightforward. Save means that you've saved it and you can go in and edit it and pick up where you left off just like a Word document. Publish is what everyone else sees. So the first save of the app will typically take longer, and subsequent saves with large amounts of changes will also potentially take a while. When this is done, it's not live. Publishing is basically what makes it live. So when we go to publish this version, we now have a version that we can look at online. So if we wanted, before we go to do that, we can look at the other settings we can change here. Now, most of them are self-explanatory, but I want to cover that you can change your name, description, icon, and other basics like some performance functionality. Auto-saving, can it be used offline? What's the data row limit, etc. The display is an important one. You also want to do this first, because if you change the orientation from, for example, if we went from portrait to landscape, it may not convert all the components to the correct width, so you may have to adjust them, which can be a little bit annoying depending on how you've built the app, and time consuming. But the general idea is you can edit those settings there, and then you can click Share. Now, this is going to be dependent on a lot of your organization's internal policies for like the various Microsoft accounts, but you should have a way to share this with everyone in your company. There might be a mailing list, or you can do it based on specific people to limit access, and then you can click copy link once you've set this up here, and you'll be able to distribute. Now, from here, if I were to click on this link, it will bring up this application in a new tab. So it's very straightforward. I would select this, and then you'll see the app, and you can edit it from, or you can actually use it from there. Now, the reason I'm going through and showing you this is when you click save, if I were to delete everything on this page and click save, that wouldn't change the app that's live and visible to other people. When I click publish, that is what will show those changes to other individuals. They'll usually get a little pop-up or tooltip that says there's a new version of the app. When they click refresh, it'll show the new version. So you want to make sure that you understand the difference between those two. All right, so we've covered most of the different navigation menus. You do have some additional settings up here, but now we're going to cover the actual app building, and then we'll go through a template really quickly. Now, within this application, the single screen apps they can be useful, but they can also be kind of painful as well when you're switching between data sources. So we have this page here, and if we select an item, the fields update. So we can click preview the app. If we select this, you'll see all of the data fields update. And you'll also see our little calendar that we added in later. Now, in this case, that's the app. Everything basically functions as expected. You can make all of those different changes within the app. And then if you need to make any other updates or change functionality, you can. So if we decided that we wanted to have something take us to maybe another page, for example. So we have some functionality here that's already built in, and I'll show the screen transitions in a bit, just because this screen, it's a single page app and it's a little harder to work with. So the idea is if you want to go ahead and share this, you can. You can build it out, edit it, swap out your data sources, and do whatever you need to. So now we're going to cover some more advanced functionalities. We're going to go ahead and close this and click Leave. And now we're going to look at creating from a template. So we have a couple of options here. And again, these tend to be a bit more user-friendly and they make those 3-page apps. But we're going to scroll through what some of the templates are and kind of the high-level overview. So if we were to choose something like, let's just say we want this apartment booking, you'll see that it takes you to this page here and you can get it and look through some of the functions. Not all of these take you to this other site. So if we scroll through, for example, if we look at My Expenses, an important thing to note here is you have to see what resources it uses, because you have to make sure that you have access to those resources, and if not, do you need to pay for them, or how do you need to get that set up? So that's one example, but I do want to show a couple of others. So if I click this budget tracker, for example, it shows no connectors. And I don't know if all of these are updated, but if you look at some of these, you'll see it has a connection to Dynamics 365 and Office 365. So based on the item that you choose or the template that you choose, that will typically determine what connectors you're also going to be working with. So that's the general idea. When you click on one, you'll see all of the different connectors that it works with. So we'll choose a simple one. So I personally like, there are a couple of these, but I'm preferable to this service desk one. Now, the reason you're going to like templates is because the interface is already built out for you. You don't have to worry about centering things, choosing text and colors. You just connect your data, make sure everything works, and you're good. Or make minor changes. So with this template, it's not really connected to much by default, as we didn't see a lot of those connectors or data sources. So we have quite a few different options. So we're going to discover some of that functionality right now. Now, while this loads, you do have the ability to do a lot of this, like connecting to graphs with a SharePoint list, or connecting to graphs based on Excel files or user input. Graphs are not incredibly difficult, but I do have a separate video on that, which I will link in the description just because it's pretty powerful functionality. And once you learn how to put multiple graphs in an app, you can create almost like a dashboard. And instead of requiring everyone to have Power BI licenses, you can just use the graph types that are automatically available within Power Apps. All right, so now that the page has loaded, we can click skip and you'll see you have an option to make it my own, which is basically just saying connect your data source. Now, when we land into this page, you'll see that this option or this app is a little trickier to work with, but at the same time, it's more valuable in that you can get more insights from it than maybe what we were using before. So the idea here is we have multiple pages. So I'm going to show you how the app functions. When we click Preview, you'll see that it's generating a list from within the app. And when we click on each of these options, you'll see that we see different items. Clicking these doesn't actually do anything, but it does at least show based on it, kind of like your high-level dashboard. You have the ability to click here to create a new item or ticket. So we have a couple of bits of functionality. Now, a couple of things that I like about Power Apps. If you want to get to a different page quickly, we can click Preview, and then I can click on this item, and now I'm at a ticket details page. When I close this, you'll see that I'm now on that ticket details page, and it'll put information in that page from what I was just looking at. So you'll see right here all of this content. if I go back to the home page and I click preview and I scroll down and I choose this option and close, it's now going to have that information pre-populated. You can also view each of the pages by clicking on the expand option in the relevant page. So when we go to the home screen, you'll see we have all of the different components. So this is a gallery with components from a given data source. You'll see all of the different options, and this is pulled from ticket types. And then when we look at the fields, you'll see that those are the ticket types option. Now, a quick way to look at what a table looks like is whatever component you're in. If you type out the table name, you'll see it shows data type, and then you'll see it shows ticket types. And it shows all of the fields and the data from that table. Same thing, if we go over here, you'll see there's a separate table for ticket collect. And you can look into all of this functionality if you want, but the general idea is just it's saying what needs to be displayed in this secondary menu. And you'll see it has a tickets collect table. So if I wanted to, I'll cut all of this and I'll add it back in a second. But if I were to type in the tickets collect table, now you'll see down here it shows all of the data from that second table. So you can edit and work with, or well, you can at least view. I'll put all of the original data back. Now we'll cover a couple of other very quick functions. So if we want to add something, we can add whatever we want. So let's go through. We'll pick a different page, one that's a little bit less populated with items. So here's our priority page with a couple of items. If I want, I can insert anything I want. So when we scroll through, we have charts, for example. We have a column chart, and I can toss that in here. And if I wanted to, I could double click this. And again, I have another video with more details. But when I choose the display option from the items, I can actually choose the ticket types if I want. And then when I go to advanced, I can choose what is actually selected. Now, in this case, ticket types only has one field. But I do have a couple of additional choices that you can work with. So if we choose a different table, and we were to choose ticket collect 1, now we have different options. So we can choose things like priority, and then the series can be whatever we want it to be. It could be description. You obviously want to choose something that makes sense, but then you can update this table. Now, this also might not be the best table for this specific data type, so you can adjust that. Another thing to note is this is all housed in a container, so sometimes you have to move the container to actually edit that specific information. So with this chart type, I've found that the bar chart is one of the easier ones to work with, but again, one of the confusing things is you have to look at your data and find something that actually works in a table. So what we can do is, if you want, you can always kind of expand things out, but we can try to use a more simple table just to show the basics. So when we choose this, you'll see we have our pie chart sample, which is the table, and we can type that in up here and view all of the different items. But if we were to select this and choose ticket collect 1, you'll see all of the different fields down here, but the data doesn't really exist in a way that can be graphed, but at least going through the labels, we can see the basics. So you may be able to find a way to choose an option that has a number value, which is kind of the main reason that most of these aren't showing. You need an actual numerical value, and then things will start to display. Now, in this case, the number value is an ID and not a quantity, so that's a little bit problematic, but the general idea is it's pretty straightforward to get these tables set up. So we have covered a couple of basics. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll resize this window back to the way that it should look. And I'm going to cover one other function that's kind of important. So that's going to be navigating between pages. So if we look at the different pages that we have, you'll see that some of these, for example, this button here, it's doing a lot of background functionality. So we might just want to have clicking on something do something. So in this case, you have a couple of choices. You can either try to find a page that will do something in particular, like, for example, the navigation. If you ever like the way a certain button functions, you can choose it and choose on select to see what it does. So in this case, all this does is this back function. Then you can, again, scroll through some other pages. Most of these are going to be the back button as well. So whatever you choose will kind of determine something a little bit different. So with this little element here, if I were to choose the on select, so you'll see all this text, the bold is the ones or the items that are being used. So on select, it's false. So we can update this and you'll see we have navigate. And then within navigate, we want this. So basically in parentheses, we're going to say what we want it to do. If you have questions on a function, you can typically hover over it to learn a little bit more. Or as you're typing it, you'll see that you get some assistance and you can usually click to see what's really just to learn more about it. So if we choose navigate, now we want to choose the screen we want to go to. So we're on the home page. We want to navigate to the ticket details page. So we'll start typing ticket details page. And then you'll see, okay, we have navigate, we have target. Now we need our screen transition. So we'll put a comma space. We'll type screen. And then you have screen transition and you have some options. If we choose screen transition.cover, let's see what this does. So we'll click this item and then you'll see it does that small transition and takes us to that new page. Now, if you want to change that functionality, you can select this, and then again, you can scroll back to on select, and instead of cover, maybe you want to change this to something else. You can put period. Maybe you want to choose cover right. We'll click preview, select, and you'll see that transition changes. So that covers the basics. I think that's a good place to start. Other videos will cover different functionality in more detail. The general idea here, though, is pretty straightforward. You can create all of your new screens, click here to choose the items within those screens, select the items, and update the properties to build out that application further. And then you can save and publish and test your app, and then you're all set. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.